Welcome everyone to Prosecutors Center for Excellence's webinar on improving recruitment and retention. My name is Christine Hammond. I'm the Executive Director of Prosecutors Center for Excellence. We are so lucky to have a number of wonderful presenters that are going to be discussing the many aspects of this issue that is a problem and a concern for prosecutors all around the country. We're now going to turn our attention to the law schools and see what is going on there. And our first presenter on that front is Noelle Dorman, who is the Assistant Director of Project and Employee Development at California Western School of Law. So I'd like to turn it over to Noelle.
Hi there, good morning. Thank you so much for asking me to participate. I really enjoy doing things like this and making sure I stay very engaged and up to date on what's going on with our valued employers. Just gonna kind of go over, so much amazing information has already been covered. So I'd say I agree and ditto, and we're seeing everything kind of exactly what you're saying. I agree with all of the new and progressive tactics that are being used in employee recruitment and retention. But I hopefully can offer a little bit from the perspective of our office and our law students, who I do try and stay really in close touch with, and our recent grads too, and grads that have been out for a long time, actually. We really value our relationship with our alumni. We have some on this call and panel today, which is wonderful. So just a little bit about what a career services office does. I think you probably know, but for our office, we take our job very, very seriously. We see ourselves as advocates for our students and our grads, partners with our employers and the legal community. We kind of see ourselves as coaches and counselors, friends, resource support for our students, kind of whatever they need to help them with their career development. We start with the very basics with an orientation. For 1Ls, we have them meet with counselors in our office. We help them get their first drafts of their resumes and cover letters ready to go for recruiting programs. And then really kind of, try and shout from the rooftops whenever there are deadlines coming up for applications or great panels coming up or networking mixers. We really encourage them to participate with outside bar organizations to get that networking down and to meet people in the community and broaden their networks, create LinkedIn profiles, all this kind of stuff. And a lot of it, I think, sounds like common sense, but these guys don't know really what they're doing, and they do need a lot of hand holding a lot of the time. And so we do that for them. We've had to do a lot more with less, like probably many offices over the last couple of years. Our staff has been cut quite a bit. And so, but I don't think that's really stopped us. Again, I think everybody in my office, we take our jobs really seriously, and we really thrive on getting these students excellent opportunities. And so maintaining really good partnerships and relationships with our employers is key. And our prosecution offices in San Diego have been excellent partners. I think students come to Cal Western to work in government a lot of time in public service. We kind of were known for that. But we have seen exactly what you're seeing in this drop in interest in prosecution lately, and even just criminal law in general. But I'd say specifically prosecution, exactly what you guys are saying and seeing across the nation, really. So again, very interested and happy to partner with you to come up with good ways to get our students to apply for these great jobs. I think that probably answers a good amount of kind of what our office does. I mean, we work with our employers and our alumni to put on panels for our students so they know what does a prosecutor do versus a defense attorney. We put on a criminal law panel, a civil law panel every year to make sure our students know what their options are. But I will tell you what we're seeing for the last two 1L classes that have come in are when we take a survey of them in their orientation, we are now seeing a shift towards an interest in civil over criminal law. And that's new over the last couple of years. And I think that's definitely what you guys are seeing in application numbers. So that's just something in general that we're seeing. It has nothing to do with prosecution versus defense. It's just a difference in what the students are more interested in. I did see a drop absolutely in application numbers during our spring recruiting program this year. Our DA's office only got 9 applicants, where our public defender's office got 16. And both those numbers are horribly low in themselves, but 9 for the DA is really, really low. I did see an interesting uptick in, not really uptick, but a higher number in the city attorney applications. In the same period was 14, so kind of in between the 2 other numbers. And I thought it was really interesting that the city attorney got more than the DA, because that's not usually the case. I would say they're usually more equal, or the DA a little bit more. But the city attorney just changed their office name, and they use the term criminal justice in the title now. And I wonder, I don't know, but I wonder if that had something to do with it, based on some other information you guys have been already talking about today, and the perspective of newer law students coming in. But something to keep in mind. I think the revamped job descriptions is key. I see a lot of prosecutor offices from up and down the state using job listings literally from 10 and 20 years ago. I see some that don't have an online process yet, and they have paper applications still and weird things. And so I think kind of streamlining and getting just the application process in general easy and online is a good idea. But yeah, I'd say, again, maintaining relationships with your career services is a really solid idea. It sounds like everybody on this call kind of does that, but just to encourage colleagues around the country and state, keeping in close touch with folks like me in the office to let us know about upcoming programs, to work on these great things like this VA Academy that we've worked on with our DA's office here in San Diego. I think that's a great idea. But that partnership is key. And we've also, I feel like we've seen a change in our contacts in the DA's office lately, and that's caused a little, I should say, lack in communication sometimes with getting information from our office. So we used to always have one contact for a year or 2 at a time, and that's changed a lot lately. And I think it may just be a sign of the times and changing workplaces, but as much as we can have a consistent relationship with any recruiter in any office, with lots of back and forth and communication about deadlines and needs and expectations is always going to be really helpful. I will also say, we do have the Innocence Project at Cal Western, and I think our students definitely have the mindset of social justice and criminal justice, and any office, prosecutor's office, that can show that they are progressive and do have these wrongful conviction units and things like that is a huge interest of our students, just kind of anecdotally from what I hear. I also was going to just kind of touch on some of the things I hear our students say, and I am now going to go into this next recruiting program more mindful and try to get more information from our students, as I think this is a hotter and hotter topic. But already I just know there's barriers, which some things I think we can do some things about, and some things it's just the way they are. But GPA requirements can sometimes be a barrier for underrepresented students. The background check can be daunting or scary sometimes. We have some DA offices that we work with that will recruit 1Ls in the spring to work in the summer, but our San Diego office does not do that. So that's sometimes looked at as a deterrent, because these 1Ls, the first time they can apply in the spring recruiting, they can't apply for the DA's office for their first job in summer. So that's just one other thing I hear sometimes.
2 minutes left.
Thank you. Like for our public defender's office, for example, if a student's already in the public defender, they don't have to reapply every semester in the DA's office. They do. That could be looked at sometimes as a barrier. And then just in general, I'll have to say that regardless of office or anything, we've had a harder time just getting our message across to students about recruiting deadlines and getting their application materials in. They have so many things going on, so many competing interests and deadlines, and with COVID and moving everything online, it's just been a weird 2 years. So I'm hoping things get back into a more normal state, but we just have had a harder time reaching our students and engaging them in general. Again, I think it's a sign of the times and what you guys are seeing already. I'll probably just kind of wrap up there, because But I do want to say, you guys you're not alone. It is not just your offices at all. It is just a weird recruiting time. I get employer emails almost daily now saying, I think you forgot to post our job listing. I haven't seen any applications. And this is for attorney positions and civil law jobs. And I say, no, I'm so sorry. I did put your listing up on our job board, but I can see only 5 people have looked at it and no one's applied yet. And it's just a funky time. It's kind of the way things are. So anything we can do together, I'm there with you guys to help. And I will wrap it up right there for now.
Well, thank you so much, Noelle. That's very helpful. I now want to turn it over to Barry Weiss, who was the administrative officer for the Onondaga DA's office in New York, which is Syracuse, but now he's a special advisor to the Office of Career Services at Syracuse University. So I now want to turn it over to Barry for his thoughts and comments on this very same subject.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, everybody. And I am still with the district attorney's office part-time. I retired a couple of years ago, and I am embedded, I guess, in career services at the law school at Syracuse University, which our office has been associated with for the entire length of time I have been here. But we were losing people because career services was non-existent. In fact, you're going to hear from one of our star ADAs in a moment who would have been lost if we were waiting for career services. He used a DA network of basically alumni to come find us, and we found him. So I know I'm not going to I'm embarrassing Alphonse, but that is true. Basically, I think one of the big things, and I agree with everything that has been said, is communication. I have been at the law school career services since December. And I have made an effort over that time to meet individually with every member of the faculty in their office. And every person I talk to, I hear, you're the first person from career services who's ever been in my office. And my response is, I'm probably also the first person from the DA's office ever to be in your office. And I get, oh, absolutely. In fact, there was one person who said, oh, your boss isn't progressive enough, compared to others. And I go, did you know that he started a drug diversion program in April of 1992? And they're like, no. And so it's basically I'm going door to door. I'm trying to change the attitude door to door, and the faculty, as much as the students, have to hear the message. And I've probably helped to cause a little bit because some of the professors all heard the first placement I made was in the White House Office of Drug Control Policy with an alumnus of Syracuse University Law School, who was thrilled to have someone and placed him. Probably helped my credibility a little bit with the students as well. But it's listening, it's communicating. As Noelle just said, these students need someone to talk to. They literally need a guide and someone to hold their hands. I was on the phone yesterday with an hour with a student who had just the basic, how do you start a relationship? I'm like, okay, you're asking me, but I went through it with them and talked to them. And it's recruiting. It's also collaborating among offices. For the first time in the 30 years with the district attorney's office here, we have communicated to Westchester and Queens. In fact, the Queens DA's office has hired 4 students from Syracuse University Law School. And I met them individually trying to go, what are your expectations after they've been hired? And many of them it was like, well, it's going to New York City and all that other stuff. I had to explain to them a little bit more what the job was. So we have to do even a better job of communicating what's going on. In New York State, we have the New York State Prosecutors Training Institute, which is a communicative group of everybody finding out jobs posting and research and communicating. And it's important. And thanks to Chris and Sophia for doing this, is people knowing what others are doing. That's a really essence. And I teach a class to undergraduates on the opioid crisis. And I have a group of speakers who come in and talking about what's practically going on. And most of the students all talk about, we never heard what was going on practically. That's a different perspective. And most of them are the social justice, rah, rah, let's change the world. And when they hear the different perspectives, I never realized there was another side to the story. We need to tell the other side of the story. And that's literally what I am doing person to person at the law school. One of the things over the last couple of years teaching a class, I've done more letters of recommendation than I have in probably 20 years. And I always ask these students, why me? And I always get the same response. You're the only one who listens to me. You're the only one who treats me as an adult, and the only one who's given me practical knowledge and experience that I can share. We need to extend, as the Academy in San Diego, extend our message to people all over and give those practical experiences to students, not only law students, but undergraduates. We have in our office and have for 30 years, we have about 25 to 30 interns for the summer. 8 of them are law students. The rest are undergraduates. In fact, of the 110 employees, over a third were interns at one time or another. And if they're not here, they're in some other offices around the country. So it's communicating, it's literally telling our story. And we had an interview this morning with a Syracuse University law student who was asked, why us now? And they go, well, the impression I had of, being a prosecutor was different than what I've gained over the last year or two. And I want to be more community and victim minded. And that's the message we need to convey to people. We're helping victims, we're doing justice, and we're all doing justice together. We just need to communicate that and continue to for down the road.
Thanks, Barry. Barry, do you feel like, I think you touched on it briefly, but maybe just to underscore it, that your professors at Syracuse Law School have an understanding of what goes on in the prosecutor's office?
Some do, in fact, but one of the things I've started to encourage both our new ADAs and the professor to communicate. I was talking to one professor who said, oh, are Doug and Caitlin still there? And I go, yes, in fact, they were just promoted to handling felony cases. This professor was absolutely thrilled. You could see the smile on her face, even through a mask. She goes, really? I go, yes. But she goes, I hadn't heard from them in a few years. So encouraging your employees who are from law school to communicate to the professors they have is another vehicle too. We have a resource. I tell a lot of students looking for a job, who are your favorite professor? Reach out to them, communicate to them, ask them. They must know someone who is, either in a law firm, or DA's office, a public defender. They have networks all over the country. Use them. But if the professors are flying blind, they're not help. In fact, the first professor I spoke to, every time I see him in the hall, he's waiting, hey, Barry, how's it doing? And he doesn't say anything to anybody else. I see that. So you got to make the connection.
And again, just my last question before we're going to turn to our panel of new graduates is, what is your sense of how much law students understand of what the work of prosecutors actually is? What's their understanding of what it is?
I don't think they have any understanding. I don't think they have much understanding of many of the disciplines in the law, let alone the DA's office. I had one student who came to me like, everyone tells me I should be a law clerk. I go, okay, why? Who's they? Well, we were at a party, we were talking about it. They get information from one another. They're not getting information from practical sources. And I finally said to this individual, do you like research and writing? And I go, no.
2 minutes left.
So I go, why would you want to do something you don't enjoy doing? And you could see the weight off of his shoulders, like, oh, thank you. I didn't really want to do it. So it's communicating and what we do.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. So they're getting information from one another, and they might not have as much information as they probably need. Well, thank you for that. So we're now going to turn to yet another group of people who probably can speak most knowledgeably about many of our concerns here, and that is a group of relatively new prosecutors. And I want to introduce Malak Behrouznami, Stephanie DeJesus, and Alphonse Williams. Malak and Stephanie are both from the San Diego DA's office, and Alphonse is from the Syracuse DA's office in New York. So we are covering both coasts. And once we have our three young prosecutors, if you could just introduce yourselves and tell us what you're doing in your office, how long you've been in the office, and then I'm going to pose questions to you. And we really thank you for joining us because you are our real audience. So if I could just start with Malak.
Well, it's good morning over here on the West Coast.
Yeah.
Good afternoon over there on the East Coast. I have been with the District Attorney's Office here in San Diego since 2017. I started as an intern, and then I was officially brought on after I took the bar as a GLC. It's our post-bar clerkship program, and I started that in 2018. And after I successfully passed the bar and stressed out for those 3 months while I was working with the office and hoping I got hired, I finally was brought on in 2019. I've been with them since.
Thank you. Right before the pandemic. Great timing.
Yeah.
Stephanie, could you give us a little background?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. My name is Stephanie DeJesus. I'm also with the DA's office here in San Diego County. I joined the office. I'm newer. I joined the office in June of 2021. Prior to being at the DA's office, I was at the city attorney's office for about 1.5 years. And then prior to that, I was actually active duty JAG for the Army from 2015 until October of 2019. And so, you know, this is fairly new for me as far as being at the DA's office, but I love it. I'm currently in the Family Protection Division here in North County. And yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you. And Alphonse, same question to you.
Sure, thank you. Good morning, West Coast. Good afternoon, East Coast. My name is Alphonse Williams. I'm an assistant district attorney in Onondaga County. I've been an assistant district attorney since 2017. I took a brief hiatus. I'm back, and I'm assigned to the Felony Trial Bureau, where we handle majority of the felony trial cases in Onondaga County.
So what we're all so anxious to hear, and you can tell that probably many of the people on this call are supervisors, recruiters, people who've been in a DA's office longer. We're so interested to hear what made you interested in applying and joining a DA's office. And we'll start in the same rotation. So Malak, can you tell us what your thoughts are?
So I actually was a third career law student. Prior to becoming a DA, I actually owned a juice bar in the community for a couple of years. Before that, I was actually a journalist, and I was living in the East Coast as well as in the Middle East for a bit. And prior to that, I actually did a short stint with the JAG, thinking I was going to go into law school right after I graduated from undergrad. I didn't know what a DA was, and I tell people that all the time because I had no idea. I read the case law in law school. I didn't realize that those things I was reading and those appeals all came from people that now are me in the trenches, trying to figure out how to bring justice to victims. I never was able to place it into the larger structure. I went to law school I'm first generation in terms of college, etc. After working at a juice bar and trying on so many hats, the one thing I realized that was a common thread was I wanted to do impact-based work. I'm adopted, and both my parents served in the military. So I kind of grew up with that in my background in terms of public service. I wasn't sure what the best means or vehicle to do that would be. So I explored journalism for a bit, trying to inform the public. I then decided to go try to fix other people's problems or understand them by going to Palestine and Israel and living there for a little bit. And then I realized ultimately I had to start at home. And that's why I opened up a business here. But once I got into the day-to-day aspects of that, what I realized was I really, really enjoyed setting up the business, finding out loopholes for small business owners, because it was so hard for me to set it up in comparison to the big Buffalo Wild Wings that was able to come in 1 month and have everything set up with their corporate structure. I thought I was going to do corporate tax law. I was working at a firm after my first year in law school. I thought I liked it. And then I realized that I didn't mind working. I've been working, I'm 34 now, I've been working since I can remember. I just didn't know if the juice was worth the squeeze in terms of the impact I was leaving, on what I was having when I was doing environmental law on the defense side. It felt kind of crummy knowing that I was getting paid to help people avoid their penalties or try after they dumped a truckload of cement into a riverbed. I had an employee that I worked with at the law firm and said, hey, my husband works at the DA's office. And I said, hey, what is that? And can we call him? She put him on speakerphone and I asked him, what do you do? And he gave me the rundown a little bit. And I was like, wait, so you're in court? I was concerned about germs. This was pre-COVID. I'm like, I don't want to be in the courtroom. He's like, you know what? I think you might like it. Everyone kept telling me I was a litigator. I didn't understand what that meant either. And I figured, I had the opportunity, I already had luckily a job locked down where I was. And I said, and I kept hearing how easy it is to get pigeonholed the first couple of years into something that you might not like. So I figured I'd explore and see what was there. What did I have to lose by trying out this gig? And I never turned back. I was actually, my first assignment was with the Family Protection Unit. I have my family history involved being domestic violence survivors, so that really resonated. I grew up in Mexico, even though I was born in Texas. I grew up in neighborhoods and in a system where we don't really trust police, and it's just based on the inherent nature of how the system was. You would be able to pay your fines up front. You would get pulled over when you really didn't have a violation, but it's just because in the particular area I was at, it was hard for policemen to make payroll. So I grew up with a distrust of law enforcement. And then once my mom decided to leave my father, we were back in the US. I realized some certain protections that we were afforded, and that kind of all just came full circle once I was interning with the Family Protection Unit in our office. I had no idea that just because we don't file a case, we actually still help victims. I didn't know that before we file a case and interfere with someone's life, we actually do roundtables to consider the pros and cons. Can we ethically bring this before 12 jurors and convince them? I didn't know the camaraderie that existed. It's so different from a law firm environment where it's every person for themselves, because you want to make sure you secure that clerkship, and then you want to make sure you secure an associate position, and then you want to make sure that you build the 2,000 hours, and then you want to make sure you're on that partner track, because if you're not, they're just going to switch you in for the next person that's just as eager. When I came to the DA's office just as an intern, there's folks sitting in other people's office discussing a case. There's someone who offered me to jump on to their mock interview to say, hey, you should work for our office. And I said, hey, I have 0 courtroom experience, and this post-bar clerkship interview is in 2 weeks, and I've only been here for 1.5. So the fact that other people are willing to invest in people that were going to come on board was very attractive to me. And then I realized that we do legislative efforts, that we focus on actually having a good reputation in the community and kind of earning some of the community's trust by either working with high at-risk youth with some of the programs that were mentioned with our outreach and mentorship programs. There's chances, I'm a native Spanish speaker. People wouldn't think that with my last name, but I've been sent several times to do anti-bullying conversations in the Spanish speaking areas of San Diego in order to show people what we also do to help parents equip themselves for threats for online predators as well. And these are things that were really appreciated by the community because they have the problems. They just don't have the bridge to connect a potential solution or even just more information on where to report it or how to get more information to keep their kids safe. So little things like that are kind of what drew me to the office. And I keep learning more and more each time. It's like, I just feel like I keep lifting rocks and I'm like, oh, look, there's something cool in here. And oh, look, we also work really close with our law enforcement with certain investigations, whether it's with human trafficking, with gangs operations. So that's actually, I have a cell phone full of law enforcement phone numbers now. And it's actually helped me personally too, just have greater trust in law enforcement. So those are the few things that kind of really drew me to the office and have kept me here.
Well, I think what you're highlighting is a couple of things: the evolving role of the prosecutor and the wide variety of things that can happen in a prosecutor office. I think everybody who don't know, they just figure you're just sitting around throwing people in jail and trying to figure out for how long. But I want to make sure that, so thank you for those insights. Stephanie, and I want to make sure we give Stephanie and Alphonse time to tell their story as well. So Stephanie, what brought you to the DA's office?
Yeah, so initially, same as Malik, I didn't have any idea what the DA's office was when I went to law school. I actually didn't know what area of law I wanted to focus on. I played sports in college. I played at a small D1 university playing softball. And so I was really into, maybe sports law, maybe being an athletic director. And I remember actually talking to Noelle at Cal Western kind of about the different career paths. I didn't know much. I didn't really know much about criminal law or anything like that. And so I did various internships. I interned at a private firm. I interned at USD in their athletic legal compliance department. I really thought that was the way I was going to go. I was the president of the Entertainment Sports Law Society. And then I come from a military background. My brother's active duty. My dad was in the Air Force. And so it was kind of just a small discussion as far as looking into the JAG Corps. And I applied for an internship. My 2L summer, I interned as a civilian at Fort Bragg, North Carolina for the 18th Airborne Corps, and absolutely loved it. The camaraderie, the physical fitness aspect, the fact that there were so many various areas of law that you could kind of, dip your toe in, I guess you could say. And so I decided to go that route. And it was, an amazing experience. I absolutely recommend anybody who talks about the JAG Corps to me to do it. And when I joined the JAG Corps active duty, you don't really get to pick your job. The judge advocate general wants every judge advocate to be a well-rounded attorney. And so I got lucky though. And my first assignment was, as they called it, a trial counsel. It's a prosecutor at Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington. That's where I was stationed in 2015. And I was a prosecutor for 3 years there. And that was really how I grew my love for criminal law. They call it military justice. And it was something that I grew passionate about. It was like, why didn't I know about this in law school? And I think also looking back, I was talking to Sophia about this, is in law school, there's kind of like a stigma. If you don't intern at the DA's office, or if you don't intern at the city attorney's office or have any prosecutorial experience, there's no way that they're going to accept you when you apply right out of law school to work for one of those prosecuting agencies, because you don't have the experience. And so it was me being in law school and not knowing what I wanted to do, I think kind of put me at a disadvantage into applying to the DA's office right out of law school. My experience and my love for criminal law kind of came, when I was already in a career, which I don't think much people have that experience. And so not only did I experience being a prosecutor in the JAG Corps, but I was also the senior defense counsel at Fort Irwin. So I kind of saw both sides of the spectrum. And again, that just kind of grew my passion and love for not only public service, but for criminal law. I got out of active duty in October of 2019, just because I didn't want to move every 2 years and was looking to settle down somewhere, and wanted to come back to San Diego. And at the time, again, with the DA's office, the timing, the DA's office only hired once a year. And I think the application was posted in January. And when I came out, or when I transitioned from active duty to the reserves, there was no open application. There's no rolling application. So the city attorney's office actually was hiring. So I went to the city attorney's office and loved it. Obviously, still, again, wanted to do my public service. And, what really got me wanting to apply to the DA's office was obviously trying more serious felony level cases, those types of cases that I tried in the JAG Corps, the reputation that the DA's office had in San Diego. And it was actually an encounter that I had with a DA at the courthouse, super generous and nice and always willing to help out whenever I called or had a question or whatever. And so, it was just those types of things too that drew me to the DA's office. As far as, trying to find out more about the office, I really utilized the website. Not being a San Diego native, although I went to San Diego for law school, I was gone for 5 years in the military. And when I came back, I didn't really know much about what was going on in San Diego County. And so the website kind of drew me even more to the DA's office. There's a lot of collaborative courts that our DA, Summer Stephan, has kind of initiated, and is an extremely progressive office. In particular, the Veterans Court that we have here kind of drew my attention to the DA's office as well. And so, luckily I applied and they liked me and they picked me. And so I joined this office last year. And again, I know looking back, I love it every single day. I feel like this is the best job. If I would have known really what the job entailed and what I would be doing, when I was in law school, there would be no questions asked. I probably would have done everything I could have to join the DA's office right out of law school. But I think my lack of education in that, and that might be me, not really seeking out those opportunities, that might be the contributing factor. But, where I sit today, I have no regrets. So that's what kind of ended me up here at the DA's office.
Well, thank you so much, Stephanie. And I think you make an excellent point about the website, because many DA's offices do not spend that much time on their website. But Alphonse, we want to hear from you and what your thoughts are on this topic. You've been waiting so patiently.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you. And so when I was growing up, I don't think I ever would have fathomed being a prosecutor, being involved in law enforcement at all. I grew up in the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia. Every day when I went to middle school, elementary, as well as high school, I passed Dr. Martin Luther King's house. In elementary, the principal followed us home and said that, oh, you lived outside the district, and tried to get us kicked out of the elementary school, to the point where Hosea Williams, who was Martin Luther King's right-hand man, had to stand up, protest, to make sure that I stayed in school. And that's just the upbringing that I had. That was the foundation that I had. So to say that what attracted me the most was something that has been echoed throughout the conversation, is the social justice, right? I'm one of those candidates. And going to law school, I don't think that I was interested in being a prosecutor as well. It probably wasn't until I was participating in moot court, doing the competitions, being a little bit successful in the competitions, where now I'm starting to think, okay, what can I do after I graduate, where I'm still doing the competitions, but in real life? And then there was the option, okay, you're going to be a defense attorney, you're going to be a public defender, or you're going to do prosecution. And just so fortunate I was to have a roommate whose father was a alum, and also he played for the Atlanta Falcons. And they said, oh, we go home often. And I was like, oh, when's the next time you guys are going back to Atlanta? And we happened to schedule the same time. We went out for lunch, and all I wanted to ask his father was, what's going on with the Falcons? How was it playing with Deion Sanders? How was just being an athlete? And he kept pivoting, like, how are you going to stay in Syracuse? How can we get you to stay in Syracuse? What do you want to do? And we had that conversation, and he said, okay, just do me one favor. I know you're kind of sold on Atlanta. Can you have a conversation with one of my friends? And that individual was someone who was a very, very higher up at the Onondaga County District Attorney's Office. And we discussed, we talked, and to keep it brief and short, I just felt valued, right? That someone of this importance, this significance, is taking the time out their day to hear me as a person, and truly feel valued, right? And I decided to join the DA's office. And very similar to what my colleagues were saying, I think I had a genuine distrust of law enforcement growing up in the inner city. I was someone that felt like all the defendants are being wrong, they're being wrongfully accused. And you get in the district attorney's office and you start to see the evidence that's against them. And your opinion changes, one, but also now you're in this position to make the change that you were denigrating the system about, right? Now you're in that power to be that change. And you also, I love our office and the fact that they give us the discretion to say, you go to your bureau chief and say, I just don't feel comfortable prosecuting this case. And they're saying, okay, you have the leverage to say you dismiss those charges or reduce it down to what you think it should be. And just being a cog in the system of social justice change and that impact. Whereas I think that you are kind of pigeonholed, for lack of a better word, if you're a defense attorney, because your perspective is only for one person. Whereas as a district attorney, you represent the people, you represent the state, you represent. And so I'm gonna have to change my AirPod because it's about to die, but I'll end my statement there.
Well, so your personal stories seem to have a common theme, which was that there was some direct connection, almost coincidental, that introduced you to what a prosecutor's office does. And changed your mind about whether this is a job for you. Do you have any recommendations? I mean, many of the people who are listening to this webinar are those who are trying to recruit and retain people of your caliber. So we have just a few minutes left. I'd like to just see if you could tell us what you, and this way we'll go in reverse. So I'll start with you, Alphonse, and just see, I mean, you obviously talked about, that personal connection and how a senior person spoke to you, but what's your recommendation about what, the more senior staff and prosecutor offices should be doing to recruit people like the three of you?
Sure. I think the biggest thing is to stop preaching to the choir. I know that was previously said, but go to other organizations, go to different places, and don't get the prototypical prosecutor. We live in a different age. We live in a different climate, no matter what spectrum you stand on, but everyone wants to make change and everyone wants to be heard. And if people actually understood what district attorneys actually do, I think a lot more people would be interested in creating that impact and being that voice for the people that cannot be heard, and making the conversation truly about victims, right? And not so pigeon or pointed towards what defendants are, right? We represent victims, we represent someone that's been hurt, and we're trying to bring them justice.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, very interesting. Can I just ask you, are you asked in your office to go speak to law students? Do you do any work on recruitment in your office?
I do. And I was the Black Law Student Association president, so I always want to reach out. I always want to help out as much as I can. Being a first generation law student, not having anyone to bounce ideas off of, it was extremely difficult. You're kind of just going through the motions and feeling what's right. That's your next step. So whenever I can, I try to reach out and I try to make myself available as much as I can.
Right. Stephanie, what are your thoughts?
I would just like to backpack off Alphonse. I think reaching out to the specialty bar organizations in your area is huge. When I was in law school, I was the vice president of APALSA, but I was still actively involved in the professional bar associations like FALSD, which is the Filipino American Lawyers of San Diego, PALSD, which is the Pan Asian Lawyers of San Diego, just to try to get networks and connections. But I had mentors in those organizations. And so if, we had DA's offices who reached out to them and tried to organize some sort of mixer or function to kind of, talk about the office or talk about open positions or application time or whatever, I think that would also kind of provide an avenue to law students rather than just going maybe directly to the law school. I think reaching out to the other specialty bar organizations, especially since San Diego specifically, I mean, we're very diverse. And I think that is kind of what prosecution agencies are starting to look like. And so I agree with Alphonse on all of that aspects. I think it's important and to talk to diverse law students and let them know, hey, there are people in our community that you can represent just like you, and I think that's huge.
And are you doing anything personally with regard to recruitment, or, I mean, not that you would have to, but just curious.
I'm not in my capacity as a DA. I mean, informally, I obviously talk about the DA's office, and but I am part of our NAPIPA, which is the National Asian Pacific Islander Prosecutors Association. I try to still be involved with high school students doing mock trial stuff, and so I don't necessarily formally recruit, but more so informally.
Right. Well, that is great, and also to do that kind of work in high schools is terrific. Malak?
So when I had my juice bar, one thing people would always come and tell me like, hey, do you want to advertise in this magazine, etc. And I tried it for a bit and I found out that the best way for me to get people in my door was to get the product in their hand. So I would just make 100 juices on the
Few minutes left.
and go hand them out. And what I found out what's working in the office here is I just go in the community. I'm one of the people that has been brought on to help with the recruitment. And just last week, I went to USD and I started younger. I started with the pre-law fraternities and sororities and the societies they have at USD, for example, to get folks that are interested in law school and try to plant the seed beforehand. And the one thing that I've been doing to try to get the product in their hand is I tell them, hey, here's my email address. Do you want to come shadow me and see what I do? So I've had a few people when I was over in East County doing the family protection unit assignment. I had 3 students come separately on different turns to just kind of see what we do, see how we work with defense attorneys. Took them to go see some hearings for some other folks that were in court. And I've done some recruiting, or I teamed up with my old school, and I reached out to one of the counselors. They said, I'm like, hey, look, I'm still hired with the DA's office. Do you have more people that don't know what they're doing and are curious? Because even it's a win-win. Even if you have someone come intern to you or see your office and it turns out it's not a good fit for them, they don't like them, but you treat them well, that's still a member of the community who either has a friend that might be in law school because law students are bonding over their trauma of law school, or you're still reaching out to other members of the community that might be victims of a crime, or on the other end might know someone or themselves might find themselves being a suspect or a potential defendant. So if they know that they're getting a fair shake whenever they come through the criminal justice system, or they know that there's other routes when someone they know or care about might be facing charges, and there might be a second opportunity that our office cares about, either through one of the collaborative courts or just in general, knowing that you're treated fairly, I think that's the best way to, in a sense, kind of get the product in folks' hands. And yeah, slowly we are becoming an office that is as diverse as the people we represent. But a lot of that also has to do with the reason I'm focusing on universities right now is we got to get people of color like myself into law schools. And then we have to make sure that once they're in there, they're actually going to be able to set themselves up for success to pass the bar as well. Because once you get a better feeder program, then you'll truly be able to reflect the population that you're serving.
Yeah, no, these are all excellent points. We have just a few minutes left of this presentation. I don't know if you, one of the three of you, want to just say just a couple of final words before we turn to our goodbyes and the survey, because we do hope that everybody, if we could get the survey posted, so we could get that lined up. But do the three of you have any sort of last words of wisdoms to this group that you would like to add?
I'll say what I say in my blog year. I'm very upfront right from the get-go. I'm like, I'm here to make sure I pick the right jury. And one thing I do that just address the elephant in the room, whatever the issue in my case is. Right now, I think one issue that we can all agree on is the bad rap that prosecution and prosecutors have right now because of podcasts, because of true crime, what have you. And one thing I address right from the get-go when I go speak to these kids, I'm just like, who here has seen this documentary? Who here thinks prosecutors can be crooked? And just kind of actually have a conversation to try to shift their perception and be like, look, just like in any profession, or just like in Yelp, you're going to have good restaurants, bad restaurants. You're going to have a good dentist recommendation, or someone that's going to say, no, don't go there, or hairstylist, and just kind of show them and personalize the fact that we're also people fitting into a larger box of what our societal role is. But just a few don't represent everyone. And I think that's one thing that's kind of gone the discourse going, and it shows people that we are human too.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Address the elephant in the room. Anything not required, but anything, Stephanie or Alphonse, any last words of wisdom for us?
I'll jump in.
Okay, let's go ahead. Right.
Sorry. Just that we're in a service of customer service, and to look for people that are going to be making your clients happy, that can relate to people, and just the things that you should be looking on resumes are jobs of customer service, where you have to provide that customer service to the people, because the victims are the ones that are going to spread those Yelp reviews and boost whatever credibility that you need boosted. And start small, and as you diversify your office, it's going to benefit everyone, having that one diverse person who's going to change other people's views, and their views are going to change. It's just going to spread like wildfire, I think.
Yeah. Stephanie, any thoughts?
I echo Alphonse's and Malik's sentiments. So.
Well, thank you so much, because I think you do give us a very realistic and important perspective that so much of this is the personal relationships, and addressing, as you said, the elephant in the room, but then explaining the wonderfully diverse and evolving role of a prosecutor, that this is not the prosecutor of 30 years ago. Most offices have evolved and are doing so many interesting things.